Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerd Steve, and today I'm joined by Gareth from DMG Info and Quest
Yes, it's
Givers
me. I'm back.
and 7D System.
And
uh,
quest givers.
yeah, all the things. As
All the
always, there will be
things.
links down in the description to all those and more. So how are you doing, man? In the middle of the night over there in Australia?
Well, it is literally the middle of the night. My wife has said to keep it down so she doesn't wake up. So
Uh,
my usual screaming and shouting will not be occurring today.
yeah, no ruckus.
No hyperbolic language.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. You can always get loud and use caps in the chat if you want
That's right.
to mitigate it a little bit.
Caps lock is on.
Yeah, I wanted to bring you on and talk about the DMG Info channel because you've kind of like relaunched, rebranded the channel and are doing something a bit different in the tabletop space.
Yes, so I have created the online terrain crafting system, or OCHIs, as some people call it,
Yeah,
which is essentially creating a diorama that you put in front of a webcam. So when you're playing online, you're playing D&D or whatever RPG you play online, you can actually have terrain and the players can see the terrain and you can manipulate your pieces and things on the terrain. Um, it's it's not something that people haven't done before. Like I know DM Scotty used to play on Skype. He used to have a camera so that his Skype players could actually see the terrain. But it was always something where you had the camera above, or you had to have some special rig and all that sort of thing. So I had the idea about 3 years ago, and I'd been messing around with the actual, like, how would you make this simple and so that you can quickly change things and you don't need to worry about like the camera angles and all that kind of stuff. And I've seen people use like Dwarven Forge and stick a camera in Dwarven Forge, but then it's like, Dwarven Forge is a lot of changing around you got to do to kind of like build the dungeon. So you as the DM, like you start to concentrate too much on the terrain rather
yeah.
than actually running the damn game. So this was sort of my, like, sit down and go, like, if I'm going to do some new videos, I want to do something that no one has really done before, but is like you look at it and it immediately makes sense. um it immediately works when you're looking at it. And so that's how the online terrain crafting system was born.
And like so, even Ted will run like he'll run our games, and we're obviously all still playing virtually, and he'll do the he'll set up another camera that's a kind of top down of the set that he's kind of come up with, um which one, the top down view is okay, but it sometimes it lacks perspective when you
It's
see
the
that
most
view.
boring view.
Yeah, right. Where like, and then I saw what you're doing, where it's very dynamic because it is almost like a first person. Well, I guess that's like a third person view still, but it's like the camera angle is directly on the scene, and the scene is shaped by the actual how the camera shoots, right? The cone
Yeah,
attack of the camera. Uh,
correct.
which is interesting, and the fact that you're using backdrops, right, which can be kind of interchanged fairly fast, and then you can use your scatter like you normally would.
Well, one is like it wasn't just that one thing that I was focusing, because part of being a YouTuber and part of trying to sustain this sort of enterprise on the internet is you want people to be able to have your things. Now, like, so if I put out a video and this is how you make a dungeon tile, and then people go out and they make the dungeon tiles, that's sort of one thing. But there's a whole group of people that watch these videos and go, that's great, but I like, it's too much hard work, right? It's like it's too much effort. And I think you might fall into that camp.
I absolutely am. I'm like, that's fantastic. Never fucking doing that.
That's right. Whereas you might be okay with cut a square out of cardboard and stick something onto it, like that.
Yeah.
That's like the least amount of effort you'll put into like doing this. You don't want to mess around with paints and you don't want to mess around with that. So my idea was like, how do I create the terrain and then digitize that and then be able to say, here, you can actually, what I've created, you can actually put into your game. And again, that's a very novel thing. No one sort of, unless you were actually building custom terrain and casting it and sending it out, no one actually does it in this way, other than digital backdrops for like online systems, but virtual tabletops. But yeah, there's
Yeah.
so there were all these kind of things going through my head when I developed the system.
So have you played with it? Because like I know, so you had the PDFs to all the stuff that you make, so basically people could buy them. It's just cut out the shape and then glue it to whatever backer you need, whether it's
Yeah.
the backdrop or your floor tiles.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of good to go if someone didn't want to just make it themselves. Um, have you messed with like green screening the backdrop and instead
I
of
actually have got a green screen version.
yeah
I release, because each time I release a video, there'll be more products attached to it.
yeah
So there'll be, like, I just did a collaboration with Max DM Crafting, where, like, one of the things I wanted to showcase is it's not like you have to build a whole new thing of terrain. You can take your existing terrain or other people's terrain, take photos of it, and use that as your backdrop. So we did like these really nice sort of town and village backdrops using his terrain. And that's a way for me to collaborate with other YouTube. Also helps to generate some income for them as well, using something that they didn't have before. So there's all these kind of like little avenues that open up with the system. It's really designed as a new vehicle, a new way for me to put content out. And yeah, so green screen is part of it. Green screen is I've shot short films on green screen, and so I have a knowledge of how green screen and blue screen and red screen works. So those sort of videos, now I can do a whole series of videos that are not necessarily related to crafting, but actually also show off a lot more of the things I can actually do. Because my previous inclination of my channel, it was like, I can cut cardboard and slap paint onto it, but that's like 1% of my actual ability. And so you're like, geez, I'm still doing this, right?
That's your worth as a human being. I cut cardboard and slap paint on it.
It's like when we started Quest Givers, people saying, oh, why don't you guys go back to crafting? It's like, we are actually, there's more diversity to our capabilities than just cutting card, slapping paint onto stuff.
And people are like, that's fine, monkey. Here's a paintbrush and some cardboard.
Keep going on that cardboard.
Yeah, I mean, it's society's like that. We get put in these boxes and they want to keep you there. I don't know what a red screen is. I've never even heard that term.
Oh, it's basically a green screen, but you use red. So you would use it for things that are green.
So functionally, they're all the same. It's just pick a different color.
Works the same. You can do white screen and black screen as well. Those have been done in the past. There's also a long time ago, in the very early stages of filmmaking, they used to use a yellow screen. So there used to be very specific like ways of getting the film, like creating an alpha channel, which is how they sort of blend one piece of film to another piece of film physically. And they used to use a yellow screen. There was a special chemical they used to use. It's all like, I go in depth on things.
So you had brought up the crossover, and I actually watched that video, and I was going to bring that up as well. The way where the way you guys take 3-dimensional terrain that's been crafted, or maybe that you have, and you photograph it, and then put it in Photoshop to use it as the backdrop to the set. So have you actually used this in games yet?
I have. I've used it in in-person games, and I've used it online. I don't have a huge amount of terrain, so I only have the basic things that you've seen so far. But I have used them in games. So it's one of those things where, like, the system is fully developed in terms of like how you handle movement and how, because all the stuff I do with like 7D system, I've already developed movement stuff that would work with this, that works with D&D. So I've already like developed all that, but I have to bring it out in bits and pieces, because if I just do a 2-hour video, no, like everyone watches the first 10 minutes, says, oh, okay, and then moves on, and they don't watch all the important stuff that comes later,
Yeah.
because everything is important. But if you read the comments on my videos, there's a lots of people who say they want to see an actual like game thing. So I think you and I should get together, and we should do a one shot, and I'll demonstrate using the terrain. And what we can also do is then we can run one of these modules.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
Is it reversed?
No, it's not for me.
It's a Tron. The North Road.
I think OBS fixes it, or Zoom fixes it, so it's not mirrored. And it's not backwards. No, actually, I must admit, I have an ulterior motive for having you on today. I wanted to ask you about running a game or games using your system, because I'm very intrigued about it, and wonder how it will work in actual play. And how fast you can transition, but from scene to scene, and things of that nature while using it. Like, one of the things was, I guess it was last year. Was it not 2020? It was
2019.
2019 that you hung out with DM Scotty at his place. So me and Ted flew out to Ohio to hang out with you guys. It was really bizarre, and like, I was talking to my wife last night, and she made fun of us again, because he's like, "Oh, that's when you went to Ohio for 5 seconds," because we like flew out late Friday night and then back early Sunday morning, and then it was so. But it was cool, because I was like, well, if you're gonna at least come to my continent, I can make part of an effort to come visit a friend, right?
I would have done it again in November if it wasn't for a certain virus that's hanging around.
Yeah.
Can't leave the island.
So I'm hopeful for the end of this year.
Well, I've got to come to the Nerdarchy, the convention. So
Yes. Once it is safe for us to do that.
And it's like, I loved that trip. Something, my biggest regret was that my wife wasn't able to come with me. And so the next trip, she will definitely be coming with me. So then people will be able to meet the SheMG.
Oh, nice.
As she is known.
Is she a gamer or nerd adjacent?
Not at all.
Yeah.
She's a roller coaster, so she loves roller coasters. So I promised her that we do a tour of roller coasters of America.
Oh, we got a bunch of them.
She gets one. Oh, you got a lot.
Yeah.
And also, when you come, where Scotty lives.
when you come here too, you like have a certain way you like to do it.
I'm not a flyer. I'm a driver.
Yeah, so you like fly in on one end of the country and then drive across it.
Well, I mean, look, I met more Americans in the heartland of America than most international tourists would. I mean, people.
I would argue maybe more than most Americans would.
Yeah. Well, this one small town population, like 105, I think it was. It was basically a glorified railway station.
Yeah.
And the old lady who was there is like, she'd never heard a foreign accent in the town before.
Oh, wow.
I drove about 7 miles off the interstate to go to this place. I was just fascinated, and like tiny little town. And they got the quintessential sort of the post office with the US flag, like all the stuff that you see in like those American, this is Americana, you know. Whereas you don't get that in the big cities, right? It just looks like every city I've ever been in, but you don't get that Americana feel. And so I wanted to do the diners and the caves and all the kind of cool stuff, the actual mountains and forests and which you don't see if you're flying over the stuff.
That's funny. You changed that woman's life. She's never heard an accent in that town before.
It's funny. We had a half-hour conversation. So my family arrived here to build the railroad, and damn it, we're still here.
Yeah, that's funny. It's definitely a different experience. Wait, yeah, I was surprised when you're like, yeah, I flew in on the other coast and just drove across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we would probably, because we got to come up and see you guys up in Philly. So, because there's three people in Philly I've got to see now. There's yourself, there's Professor Dungeon Master, and there's Runehammer as well,
Yes.
Hankrin. So,
I mean, there's
like I'm,
technically four of us. I mean, you just relegated me and Ted to the same person, but it's okay.
oh, I said you guys.
Yeah. There's a lot more than that. V's in New Jersey.
Oh yeah, V, of course.
Um,
Jersey, but
yeah, yeah.
like you got to remember that to me, America seems massive, but I know like in that top right corner there's a lot of things all squished together.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I just made a recent discovery too that Mr. Rex
Mhm.
is also in New Jersey.
Okay,
He lives
we
on
could
the
do it
other.
like a mini convention, mini like YouTuber convention
I've been
thing.
listen. I've been trying to collect all the like creators around me, like Pokemon. I've been. It's a project I've been working on for the last couple of years. James Intricasso, he's another person that is here in New Jersey. Matter of fact, we were like on one of these live chats, and he said something, or I said something. I'm like, wait a minute, where do you live? It's like we could have like just did it in person because he lives like two towns over.
Well, on my 70 system Patreon, like when I first started doing live games on the channel, like I put out a call to patrons to be in the game, and this one guy said, yeah, I'll come in. I'm in Australia. Oh, great, great, great. Um, and then he started talking, and I was like, dude, where do you live? And he finds that he's the suburb next door to me.
Oh yeah,
He's
yeah.
like a 500-meter walk around the corner.
Small world, small world.
So we've done in-person games now.
Nice. Yeah, I mean that is one of the cool things is like I find just by doing more nerdy stuff and being out there, we do get exposed and meet more people that are local. So
Yeah,
so it's kind of helped with the in-person games. I mean, at least it did until the world ended. But
yeah.
eventually we'll defeat all the zombies and we'll be able to get together again.
Outside of conventions and nerdy culture, do you ever get recognized in the street?
Yeah, occasionally.
Okay,
I think
that hasn't happened to me.
the last time was when I took my wife to the doctors and I was waiting outside and the mail person recognized me. But
Okay,
also, in all fairness, like I don't know if you saw any of the pictures of my car.
no.
It's got like the Nerdarchy goblin bomber on the hood
Oh,
and the
okay.
nerdarchy.com logos along the side. So
Nice little tax deduction there, Dave.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it sticks out a little bit. But yeah, so Ted has gotten noticed quite a few times. Um, I think I have one of those generic looks anyway.
It's
So
Santa.
yeah, Santa, biker, whatever. Um, but yeah, so Ted has got recognized at several of the stores, and yeah, every once in a while happens. Obviously it happens way more often at conventions and way more
Yeah,
often
yeah.
when we're in like the D&D organized play section.
Well, I mean, like
Uh,
I'd never expect people coming and asking for my autograph when I went to Mace, and
yeah,
this was very foreign to me. The only people who ask me for my autograph are the bank, and it's usually a bad thing.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It is. It is weird. Like the whole thing, like the concept of having fans is weird. And like Ted embraced it right away. Like he's just got that kind of like personality. And I remember like me and my brother would give him so much shit about it, right? And
yeah,
I still mock him from time to time in subtle ways and not so subtle ways. Like so like a lot of times when people come up to talk to us, he's like just figures like they recognize us from the channel.
yeah.
But so we were going to Gen Con and I had been chatting with this guy in the restroom and we're walking down. He was heading the same
Yeah.
direction. And I knew what Ted was going to do.
Mm.
So I just let him do it. But like he had no idea who we were. He just recognized like fellow nerds, making their pilgrimage to the,
You can
to the
always
Mecca.
tell.
So Ted started talking to him like he was a fan. I just like to watch and let him go.
So, Dave, what did you've received one of these?
We did. We
What
received
did you
several of
think?
them.
What?
I like
Yes,
it,
thank you
man.
for
It
that.
it looks good. You guys have a generic, well, not generic's not the word I want to use.
System neutral.
System agnostic or neutral
Yeah.
adventures that you put out. And what? How did you guys come up with the concept and then the premise for these? And you've also had different people jump in to contribute as well.
Yeah, so questgivers.com is for DM Scotty, who runs the DM's Craft, and myself. We've always wanted to do modules, and I had done a module on my channel called Under the Tavern, which was enormously successful. It still sells today. Even though the videos are all unlisted, that people still find them through the
Yeah,
playlists and they still buy the
it's a
videos.
DMG Info bestseller.
Yeah, it is. It is. It fed me for a while.
Mm.
Yeah, so he and I were like, we always wanted to do modules because like that's it's part of you're not really involved unless you're making modules, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So and we're a super creative guys, so we wanted to like exercise that muscle. So we decided, well, let's create a whole new channel. It's the two of us. There's logistical issues with being on the other side of the world from each other, but we make that work. And it's probably one of the best collaborative creative things that I've ever done. He and I come up with the concept of what a module is going to be. So every module is different. It's not like it's just cookie cutter. Oh, it's just the same crap. We've changed the monsters. Like we approach it like, is this going to be like a horror? Is this going to be more of a puzzle thing? Is this going to be like a police procedural? We do like one of the modules in the North Road is called Thief, right? And you rock up in this tiny village and someone's been murdered. And so it's kind of like a whodunit police procedural in fantasy. And so we wanted to play with all the different like things or tropes that people use in games and sort of play with that and come from a different perspective. And the reason why we went with system neutral rather than doing D&D 5e is that one way for us to promote our modules is to collaborate with people who have small games, small indie developers that have tiny little games that they don't have the budget to have a team of people go and write modules for their game. So we can get together with them and say, look, our module is system neutral, so we can help promote your game and you can push the modules for that. And we're starting to go into that now. We've got one or two that we're starting to go through, and I'm talking to a couple of people about, bringing on. So we will help them with bringing their game to the fore, and also we have content that can be run in their system as well. But it really comes down to that exercising that creative muscle and doing things that we always wanted to do with our channels. But really on our channels, if you try to do anything like that, even though Under the Tavern was extremely successful for me, it wasn't my most watched videos. People weren't there for that. So to separate it out into a separate thing was important, to give it its own identity.
Now, I know like Ted did a 5e conversion for it on our channel for one of the adventures on our channel. I think Professor Dungeon Master has done something with you guys as well.
Yeah. So he did Macbeth, which is he co-wrote it with William Shakespeare.
He grabbed a Ouija board and off to the races he was.
So like the new and improved version, improved for D&D.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun because he'd been playing that module in conventions and all that, but it was very D&D. So sort of we did all the layout and did all the art together, and we did a lot of the art. There was some other people that did art as well. And so we actually collaborated in terms of removing the D&D-isms from it and making it more generically playable. So that was sort of our sort of contribution to that. which it's doing very well. So if you're interested in Mac Death on questgivers.com,
So, what are
that's
some
what.
of the challenges and advantages to writing something that's system agnostic?
Well, the first thing when you're writing a D&D module is like, what level are the characters going to be? What system are you using? It's like, are you second edition or fifth edition or whatever? So what you've got to do is you've got to remove everything that's mechanics. So don't ever talk about hit points or damage or anything like that. It's all about flavor. So it's a very flavorful thing. Um, and one of the key things that sets us apart from a lot of modules is we include dialogue of the characters. So every NPC has a list of reactions to a variety of questions. And the questions will come from things they would have learned previously in the module or basic questions they would ask about the environment. And so those are all there, and it's in the voice of the NPC. So you get an idea of who this person actually is through the way that they speak, which gives you the dungeon master. I mean, that's the hardest thing for new players to do, and some dungeon masters, it's very difficult for them to come up with dialogue. So like that's why we provide that, because for us the NPCs are the things that actually create the world. They're the things that make the world real. You can describe a mountain to the nth degree, but until an NPC comes along and tells you how hard it is to climb the damn thing, it doesn't have the same sort of resonance.
You should totally use the quest giver logo next to all the dialogue.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like, well, it's a QG, right?
Yeah,
And of
yeah.
course that like the I was amazed that questgivers.com hadn't been registered, because it's such a common term.
Yeah, you would think so.
You would think that it would be something like, I was amazed. And we went through about 60 names of what we were thinking of. But it's
I
the
know exactly what you're talking about.
and this is the one that sort of made the most sense.
Yeah.
Like it sort of instantly tells you exactly what this is, right? Um, and so that's and once that name was brought up, it was like all other 59 of them just disappeared straight away. It was like, nah, that one for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, when we we're looking for a name for what Nerdarchy would eventually become. We must have gone through every iteration of nerd and geek possible, because we're like, well, you want to be able to get the website, for whatever the thing you're doing is. So that was kind of like where we started,
Yeah.
right? So I definitely understand. I wish I still had the text messages going back and forth with my brother as we'd like come up with ideas, and like would go to GoDaddy and see if the domain name was available or not.
Well, if it was available, I just buy it. Someone will
Yeah.
want to buy that from me later.
Well, that's just it. When you're using nerd and geek, like
Yeah.
everything was taken.
I like in your background, which I think you're green screening, but
Yeah.
the nerdarchy in the with the Scrabble pieces.
Oh yeah, yeah. A friend of ours had made that for us, and given that to us. So it has been assembled onto the site where all things get rotated in and out.
Yep.
So when did you guys start doing the quest givers, and was there a specific genesis or something that made that happen? Or did you guys, I want to write modules, let's write modules?
Well, we started the Tabletop Crafters Guild, and Scotty and I were like hoping we could get everyone else to help like put together a TCG module, and no one was interested. So, and we were like, well, we still, like we've got this burning desire to do this.
Yeah.
The second module was the Arcane Vault, which is like a quick sub quest of that main one. And the thing all along is we want to do an anthology or a campaign of these modules for a year, and then we would do a Kickstarter that would sell a physical book. And it all came to fruition. It all sort of worked. So it's like the first year and a half, 2 years was really sort of the pilot. So now we've moved into sort of the collaboration phase where we're beginning to collaborate with people and bringing other people in. Um, and really for us, it's about creating a space where everything that we sell on that site is kind of curated content. It's like we won't put something on there that we wouldn't play ourselves. We
Mhm.
wouldn't like I don't want to just put out something that's we're just I needed to put something out this week. It would be something we've considered and we would actually play. Scotty is about halfway through running through this campaign with his group at the moment. And we've got someone who's actually diarizing everything that they're doing and they're thoroughly enjoying it. So um it's 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 a great experience having a good artistic collaboration with someone, because sometimes collaborations, they work, and that's it. But this is like Scotty and I have like a lifelong friendship. We're now like brothers in arms. We're messaging each other every single day. So the only problem is we live on the other side of the world. So
Yeah, yeah.
which makes it really, really hard.
It is tough. Like I said, you're in Australia, and it's like, what is it, like 4 a.m. or something now?
Yeah, it's 4:30.
Yeah,
I was just
that's
I was just thinking, there's probably people alive now that were born, like 20 years ago, that have never heard the phrase at the time at the sound of the tone, the time will be 4:33 a.m. Beep. I'll have no concept of what that
yeah.
actually is.
So Charles wants to know how much
Yep.
playtesting goes into a system agnostic product. Are you running it through D&D or Warhammer Fantasy or whatever else with different player groups?
We we don't really play test them. So because we've been doing this for so long, we have a structure where we actually sell the special sauce on our website. It's called How to Run a Successful Campaign, or How to Run a Successful Role-Playing Game Campaign. It's 99 cents, right? But it gives you exactly what it is we do to create the drama of what happens in a module. But because we've been DMing for both of us for, if you combined it, probably 60 years, you kind of know what's going to work and what's not going to work. um, and because Scotty and I have run a lot of different systems and we've actually created our own systems, Scotty's Easy D6 system is something that's going to be brought out in the future, and my 70 system, which will also be coming out soon. That those modules, because it's flavor rather than like you don't have any mechanics. If it was mechanics, then yes, it would need to be tested to make sure that it works at third level and so on and so forth. But it really pigeonholes it, because then your thinking is all about this thing, and then you're trying to make it fun for third level characters. But what happens to 10th level characters or first level characters? And so you then have to rethink your module so that if someone goes through this with a 9th level character or a first level character, they can still go through the module, but the DM comes up with the stats of the monsters. So we provide monsters that are sort of flavor templates that you can apply onto whatever game system you've got. You can stat block it yourself, which it's that whole thing of like you add an egg, right? you've bought the cake mix and you add an egg, so
Yeah.
you've done it. So you get that satisfaction of actually having still done the DM's job. And you've made it your own, which is another key point of what we do. Is we want people to modify it and to make it their own. We don't want to be like, we don't want you to run it vanilla. We want you to make changes, and we even states in there, please tell us how you changed in our community stuff, so that because we're always interested to see what changes people make.
Yeah, you know, when you're doing something involving mechanics, it definitely requires more play testing to see, does it break? Is it too easy? Is it too hard? Those kinds of things, where like you're like where you said, where it's system agnostic. If you're like, well, this is an adventure about werewolves, right? Well, then you would take a look and see, well, what does that mean in D&D? What does that mean in Warhammer? what does that mean in cipher system, right? So like the challenge is going to be all over the place depending on the system. You know, werewolves might be really tough in this system, but not as
Well,
tough in another.
well, we would tend to not call it a werewolf. So we would give it another name and give it some flavor, and the person go, well, that's really much like a a werewolf.
No, the
uh,
Woolworth.
no, not the Woolworth. So yeah, then they can add in that thing. Like we have a Sarlacc, okay, which if you read the name, it's Sarlacc on, which is the Sarlacc from Star Wars, with tentacles coming out and grabbing people, and
Yeah.
so it there's no, it's essentially what we thought it was. It's a beholder in the ground, but instead of an eye, it has a mouth, and it can't move. It's just stuck in the ground, so it goes and grabs you with its tentacles and tries to eat you. Now there's nothing sort of in D&D that's like that, but you can look at it and go, okay, for the tentacles I'll use this stat, and for the mouth I'll use this stat, or if you one of these people can come up with the stats on the fly, then it's easy enough for you to go, okay, well, it'll be this strength and this dexterity and have this attack bonus and so on and so forth. So the moment you become, with anything that's system neutral, the moment you become prescriptive and you say this is what it must be, and it's a mechanic, you alienate some system somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh, I bought this product and it doesn't work with XYZ fantasy. And then that we don't want that to happen. So we don't know what level the person's going to be, which is the big one. Even if if it's just D&D people buying our products, you wouldn't know what level they are. So it should work at level 1, and it should work level 10. Anything over level 10 is a bit ridiculous in D&D, but yeah.
A little bit.
No, yeah, but it's like, when it comes down to it, it's like there's a horror one called The Grip of Evil, where you rock up in a tavern and there's this grumpy old dude who's like leads you by like lantern to your room sort of thing, and then weird shit starts happening. It doesn't matter what level you are for that to be spooky and weird. Okay,
Yeah.
like that's not level dependent. Then there's another one where the whole module is a chase scene from beginning to end. You're in this rickety cart and you're going down this path on the side of a mountain. And you've got this giant death wheel coming after you with women on the top, nuns like throwing magic at you. So like that's not really level dependent. Like if you're a higher level, the nuns have more powerful magic. And so, like we say, a blast of magic hits you instead of like a lightning bolt. Because if you say lightning bolt,
Uh-huh.
that's, oh well, I've got to use the lightning bolt spell.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, everyone here is immune to lightning bolts. And then like this whole thing doesn't make any sense, right?
Why
So
would they be running? Yeah.
so it's very generic in that sense. But the thing is with that is it frees you up to do a lot. Like now because you're not restricted by a rule set, you're not restricted by a list of magic, you're not restricted by like a setting, you're not restricted by a company, you're not restricted by any of these things. You can do anything. And all we have to do is keep it generic enough that that flavor is what people are looking for. It's the drama and the flavor is really what Quest Givers is about. We provide the drama and the flavor, you provide the stats.
It's like Mad Libs
Hmm.
for gaming, right? You guys like give all this information, then all you have to do as a DM is plug in the details, right?
Yeah.
And and it can be whatever you need. So, what are you guys working on nowadays?
So we're doing a collaboration. I can't mention the name of the game, but it's a well-established little game that has a very big community, but there's never been a proper product for it that we're developing. Um, so we're co-developing that with a person who wrote the game. We're developing a module with Wylock at the moment, which is
Okay.
very cool. He's got a really cool concept for a module, so that in the coming months will come out. We hope to do a second one with Professor Dungeon Master because the first one was really, really good. Um, and we are starting our next phase of our next series of 12, which is called the Hidden Valley, which is very different from the North Road. It's very different in tone. It's very different in style. But like for us, it took us an hour and a half to kind of come up with this is the arc of the story and what should happen, because we have this design document that we sell that basically, like tells you specifically how to do it.
Right.
Um, and so like we know certain things have to happen at certain times. And so each one of those things is a module. And then in the module, we use the same structure to structure the module itself. So we're in the phase now of going through and just sort of bullet pointing what needs to happen in each module. Scotty has already started on art because we've got like a whole thematic concept of what everything's going to look like. I'm going to be doing terrain in my style as well, so there'll be images in the actual PDFs, and hopefully the book if we kickstart it, that will feature that sort of thing. So I'm building terrain for that. Scotty's building terrain for it. And of course, then for us, that gives us content to do on our channels, our other channels as well, because we're building terrain for a purpose. Which is otherwise you're just sitting there going, "Oh, what should I build this week?" Oh.
Yeah. Do
Now it's
you?
like you get
I was just gonna say, now that you're making modules and adventures, do you think of that from a crafting standpoint? Like, you know, how much does that come into the process?
well, before it was okay. The only thing you would really build is like the dungeon or a generic wilderness for your wilderness encounters. But now with the system that I've developed, I actually will do the normal things you would do theater of the mind. Like when people go around in the marketplace and they want to go and buy weapons and so on and so forth, slam down the marketplace. Here's the marketplace. You're at the city gate and you're negotiating with the town guard about like how much tax should you pay to get in, and the thief is climbing over the wall. I can present the front gate now. Those are the sort of things. It's like all of a sudden you need a hell of a lot more terrain. Well, yes, you can still theater of the mind things, but when people actually see it in front of them, it totally changes their entire perspective of what's actually happening. Because now everyone's on the same page. Everyone's like, okay, I can see where the gate is. I can see where the bush is. I know how tall the wall is. Like I don't have to re-describe, because the problem with theater of the mind oftentimes is if you've got 6 or 7 people that are playing, someone's going to misinterpret something that you said. And so the thief goes, "Oh, well, I'll just climb over the wall. It's like a 50-foot high wall."
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Whereas here, it actually is a shortcut. It basically, everyone gets onto the same page. This is where everything is. And you can then go on from there. And that's what really terrain in itself, when you present a dungeon and, okay, I want to go around this corner, I want to open that door, I want to, it makes it easier effectively. And I'm just
Well,
trying to
the adage is, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right?
exactly.
Like, and you're right. Then exactly what you're saying is you're shortcutting it. Instantly what I started thinking about, and this is something we don't do in our games at all, but because like gaming right now involves screens so much more than it ever did. Um, the idea of having a window dedicated to these dioramas that would take up the whole window, that particular window, um, where it has more of like a organic feel to it. It just feels more immersive than the top down view of whatever the scene is. And that's what I really liked at it. Like it has a film quality to it,
Exactly.
more than like a game quality. And so I don't know if this is something you do plan to do or have thought of, but when you start describing the marketplace scene, I'm like, even though I've never really done this before and never really cared about it before, instantly makes me want to use things like Sirenscape, or any of the other, you know, uh, apps or music or soundtracks out there that you can use for gaming. I mean, there's tons of them now. Um, some of which are free. Matter of fact, if you like search YouTube for music and D&D anything,
Yeah.
someone's made it, right?
Yeah.
And most of the time you can get it for free. So like the idea of you like your style and having like the tavern scene and like the tavern sounds going on, maybe kind of low in the background feels so much more immersive than any other experience that I've kind of witnessed for online gaming that involves the same thing. Um, if,
Well,
if you
one
get smell-o-vision in there, man, then like you've got it 4D.
well, one thing that I'm doing with in-person games is I have the webcam, which you would normally put over the internet for the online players, right? But
Yeah.
when you're in person, I feed it to my TV. So I got like a 50-inch TV with the scene, and I'm sitting below the TV, so everyone can like see what's happening. And I just have like, it's a box, so you can't see the terrain, and I'm just moving things around, but you see what's happening on the television. That works really well.
Oh, okay. So you're like doing that behind the screen, kind of,
Yeah, yeah.
and then
So you
projecting
can,
it.
yeah, because you quickly swap out so they can't see the. So I just put like a cover over the camera like this, so you can't see what I'm doing, and then reveal and like you're now in the marketplace. Um, and what you can do is, because the system works with a stage, so you have a stage and you put down the floor and you put down the backdrop and then you fill in your extra bits. And my future videos go over the extra bits,
Yeah.
of which there are many. And so you can have more than one stage. So you could have 3 or 4 stages. So your next scene is already pre-constructed. So you just swap, move out that one and move in this one. So your scene changes really fast.
I feel like
Um,
someone like you too, like could probably just switch cameras,
oh
like,
yeah, I've got too many cameras.
and not even like worry about switching the scene for at least like three of them anyway. And just be like, with a click of button, boom, new scene.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like Matt Mercer with his Dwarven Forge terrain, he does like pieces of plywood with the scene kind of already set
Yeah.
that he would move in and out as needed. So like your system will work just as easily. It'd just be much lighter.
Yeah. And also he has an army of people to help him.
Yeah, well, there's that too. Although I will say, like, when we were in Ohio with you and DM Scotty, and we played the game that Scotty ran, I was super impressed with how fast he can move from scene to scene
Mhm.
with that terrain. I always expected to play in a game like that. While it would be constantly like breaking immersion because of how labor intensive it would be to shift in and out of the scenes of the game. But like Scotty was so good at it. Like, and I don't know if it's abnormal for a terrain style DM, or if that's the norm. So
Well, Scotty is a genius. I mean, you've played in one of his games. I've played in 3 or 4 of his games. Um, and it's not role playing. It's an experience.
yeah, yeah,
It's beyond, like, he defines this is how fast a game should be played. It's like when you play in one of his games, you might only be playing 3.5, 4 hours, right? But a normal D&D game, you might get 3 or 4 combats in, but no, this dude will do 9, 10.
yeah.
And it's like balls to the wall. It's just scene after scene after scene of massive like terrain sets, and everything is wild. It's very difficult to describe. It's very, very difficult to describe the experience, because no matter what you say, people go, oh, but that's just this, or that's just that. It's like, no, you don't, until you've actually experienced it, you have no idea how good it is.
One of the things I wanted to do at the convention was do like a celebrity game and have DM Scotty run it using one of his adventures with his terrain setups, just because I felt like it was so good that like that whole thing needs to be captured and put out there for the world to experience.
Oh, absolutely. when he does conventions, they have to give him his own room because the ruckus that like his games create, like this, like people get like really into it, and like there's emotion, and I mean, it is an experience. And so like usually the conventions have to like move them, because if you do it in the hall with everyone else, like
Yeah.
everyone gets distracted by this chaos that's happening over here. And but the people that are in the chaos are loving it, but the people outside the chaos are hating it
Yeah.
because
So,
I want to be in that
so
game.
does he end up with an audience, like people watching
Oh
the
yeah.
game?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I can imagine, because it is an experience, and DM Scotty is such a great role player,
Mm,
but then like his ability to combine his storytelling, his role playing, and the use of props and terrain is unparalleled. Like I've never seen anything like that.
thanks, Dave.
Yeah. Hey, I'm waiting to see the new system. Maybe you can match them. But then again, I have not played in a lot of terrain games like that, so like I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's normal. But I will say, like as far as role playing and storytelling
Well,
going,
I've played in a
Sky's
lot
really
of
good.
terrain games, and I've
Yeah,
run a lot of terrain games, and I've not seen it run that well.
yeah. It's like
So
a
it's
well-oiled machine.
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean he normally has a terrain assistant at conventions, the person
Yeah,
that helps him with doing very rapid scene changes. So he's going on and doing, but he's got like a whole bunch of modules that he runs, right? There's like a teddy bear futuristic sci-fi thing
yeah,
that's the one I played, which is just amazing. There's Weirdly Strange Night of Terror, which is on questgivers.com. That's also really cool. There's a death race, like sci-fi race one that's amazing. You played in the sort of like ancient Egypt type one that he does as
yeah.
well. That's really, really cool. Um, yeah, it's just, I mean, the guy is just filled to the brim with so, and part again with quest givers is like we want to get that out and give it to the world. Otherwise, it's like only the handful of people that have actually played with Scotty will actually have experienced this. So it's like we try to package it and sort of get it out there. That's part of what it is, quest givers. So
So Jake from Mini Terrain Domain does a pyramid
yeah.
game, which I would like to get into that also for some comparison. Jake's a great guy, but I don't know if you've seen his mummy tomb pyramid where it like
It's a
comes apart.
great piece of terrain. Yeah.
Yeah,
My only issue with it is it's top down. That's
yeah,
my
yeah.
only issue with it.
It is top down, and there is literally no other way to do it the way the terrain's built, because
Yeah, yeah.
uh because of the fact that it's a three-dimensional object that comes apart for you to adventure in.
I know. But yeah, look, I've been a big fan of his channel. He does a lot of sort of streaming games now.
Yeah.
I don't think he does a lot of terrain streaming games though.
No.
But then most people don't, and the reason is because it's kind of boring from the top down. No one wants to sit and watch a static map for 30 minutes, right? But you put a scene in front of them, and there's like all kinds of interesting things in the background, and like your mind can wander in this sort of virtual space. And as minis are moving around it, like your brain is attracted to it, and that's why I like the system, is that it actually feels different to everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I definitely, when I saw the last video you did, I was like, yeah, I would love to see this in play, and get more people exposed to it as well, just because it just looks so dynamic. And like I'm not a crafter, right?
Yeah.
I have very little to no interest in crafting, but I find your videos on it entertaining, and also like a bunch of videos that DM Scotty has done in the
Thank you.
past that I just find myself
Mm.
watching, because you guys are very, very skilled and talented at it. But I will say, like the DMG info videos in the past, while I enjoyed them, this one I enjoyed even more because it was just so different than what I was used to seeing, and it felt innovative
Yeah.
in the space. And also like the very first video you launched, where you're like, I'm not even playing in person anymore. So you kind of went into
Yeah.
that a little bit, and
Yeah.
like you kind of like the dilemma you had about gaming.
Well, I mean, 99% of the people that I play with don't live in the country that I'm in. So like, like to be a terrain guy and not
Yeah.
be able to use the terrain is kind of very difficult. My handful of friends that will play, what it's like to try and organize a game. It's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, let's do it every month. And it's like 6 months go by and nothing's happened, right? Um
Yeah, yeah. It is tough getting together a group of adults.
yeah,
Especially like on a regular basis. That's why most of our games are monthly games where we just rotate from game to game and
yeah,
group of players to group of players. Like we've got 3 games going on right now with very little player crossover. Like my wife is in 2 of the games, and
yeah.
then me and Ted are in all 3 of the games. But everybody else, we kind of just like
It's
switch
easier
out.
for someone to commit to a Zoom
Yeah,
or to a Zoom meeting than it is to go, "Oh, I've got to drive across town and get a babysitter and organize food." And, like there's all this baggage that in-person play comes with that
yeah,
kind of goes out the window with online. It's like, so long as I'm wearing a decent shirt, you don't know what's below the camera. So, and I've got my fridge over here with stocked with all my favorite beers, so I don't have to drink all the beer that, I don't drink beer, but I would
yeah,
assume that people like different beer. So, all that sort of crap just disappears. But the problem is that it's not, it doesn't have that personal feel to it. And one of the things with this terrain is to try to bring the humanity back into the damn thing.
yeah.
The fire that you sit around and tell a story.
I mean, I will say like online play does condense the experience,
Mm,
so it makes it easier. Because like when we go to Ted's and we play, it's like okay, like everyone has to commute, whether it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever, to come to the game, and then the first like hour is us like ordering pizza or eating and just BSing, and then we'll play until whoever's running says the game's over, and then there will be like 30 to 60 minutes after the game of more BSing, um, which is all great, and then followed by a commute, right? So then like now we're talking about you've got about 3 hours of not gameplay and then 3 hours of maybe gameplay, right?
yeah.
Plus the side chatter. So that's a much bigger block than going, hey, we're going to game Saturday night, be there at 6, right? And if we end at 10, that was still 4 hours. We probably did some of the BSing, and all you had to do was walk to wherever your computer was. So
But I like to run sessions that are like 8 hours long. So it's like it's a commitment.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, look, I mean, online, if I've got 3 players, I know I can do everything I want to do in 3.5 hours. If I add a player, it adds like an hour and 15 minutes. I've got it down to an exact science. So I don't like to play with more than 3 players because it's just like that's going to run on.
it messes with your science. Science. Um. So, how's your gaming group responded to the new way of doing things?
Well, I mean, they're enjoying it, so that's always a good thing. No one has said, "Oh, this is a stupid idea."
Yeah.
You know, Plenty of people said, "Oh, I had this idea years ago." Like, okay, well, put it out there. um,
like Al Gore inventing the internet.
that's right. Like it doesn't bother me if like that's fine if you had the idea that no one can copyright an idea. I prefer that people go and like do their own thing. You don't have to use my way of doing it. That's not like I've created a thing and you must do the thing, right? Like
Apparently, you have not heard of patent trolls.
uh, no, but I mean it's
A
like
patent
I'm not
troll
that.
is someone that patents an idea that hasn't been invented yet, so they wait for someone to invent it so they can sue them.
That's right. But I mean, it's like just go out and do it. That's like,
Yeah.
you like if you had the idea, like put it into action. I mean, that's one of the things that I like. I always want people to put things into action. It's the one thing to sit around and talk about and have an idea or whatever, but you really need to put it into action. It's like you guys
Yeah.
got onto the internet and started talking about D&D and grew a thing, right? it's like one thing to sit in the comment section and you know, but it's another thing to actually go, right, I'm going to like put my thoughts out into the world. It's a whole different beast.
Yeah, pretty much ideas without action is just daydreaming, right?
Yeah.
So there's not much you can do with that. So we are up on the hour mark. Final thoughts before we head out.
The North Road from questgivers.com. It's a fabulous collaboration, if I do say myself, but everyone, you can go onto the actual Kickstarter and read comments that people have said about it. So it's the best thing I've done so far in this community. I'm very proud of it. And you will have fun. You will have fun with everything has been designed to be fun. All right. So yeah, I hope people enjoy it as much as I enjoyed making it and also enjoyed playing it.
Thanks for coming on, Gareth. Appreciate it. As always, links are in the description. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.